I've never done this before, but this is just going to be a super quick episode of the Mareathon. I was really moved and touched by a podcast that I listened to in the last week, so much so that I knew I wanted to just quickly film something to implore you to listen to it, and also just to point out a few of the things that they talked about that I'd never thought about and now seem like irresponsible that I'd never thought about it. So welcome to another episode of the Mareathon. My name's Mare. Thanks for hanging out today. Life's not a sprint, it's a marathon. I'd love it if you laced up and subscribed to this channel. This is a little bit different of a video than I normally do, but I listened to this podcast and I knew I had to just tell you about it. So got it up on my phone here. I'm going to link it down below. It's in the Oprah Super Soul podcast, and the episode is titled Best Life-Saving Lessons. It's only 34 minutes long. You can skip through the ads, but I really encourage you to take some time to listen to it, share it with your girlfriends, get your daughters to listen to it, your nieces. It was so eye-opening to me that even just as I'm saying this too, I'm like, I need to text my niece and get her to listen to this, and my sister. So it says, Oprah discusses the best life-saving lessons she's learned and says we should use our intuition and the voice in our hearts and our heads that says something is off here. And she talks about like different ways throughout her career that she's taught women how to trust their intuition, and it's so interesting to me. So she talks about how, like, if you are going into a situation and something feels off, you should trust that right away. If you're going into a situation and you feel unsafe, you should trust that right away. But as women, more often than not, we're raised to be polite, we're raised to be nice, we're raised to not hurt anyone's feelings and not speak up for ourselves. And that's how women get seriously hurt, raped, murdered, assaulted, you name it, a myriad of horrific things that happen every single day. And she talks to people who have been in that situation and who didn't trust their gut instinct. There's a really interesting anecdote with Gabrielle Union in the podcast, and she talks about how she was held at gunpoint and raped while working in a shoe store when she was younger, and that as soon as the guy walked into the store, she knew something was off. But she wanted to be like the polite person doing her job, so she just started talking to him, and then the horror ensued. It was like a really eye-opening podcast because that's like me to a T. You know, you feel uneasy, you feel unsure, you're like, I don't feel right about this, but you don't want to make a scene, you don't want to say something and then be made to feel stupid, like you're over analyzing it. But like, who cares? If you don't feel safe, or you don't feel like, you feel like something is off, you need to trust that, and you need to trust your gut, and you need to get out of there, or you need to tell somebody. So I'll give you two examples of how this has happened to me in the last week. One, I was walking down a path, which is like a wooded path that I have walked countless times listening to my headphones, and there was a guy approaching me, and I just suddenly felt super unsafe. I don't know why. He could have totally been like, it could have been fine, but I was like, nope, and I just turned around and then walked back to my house. And I thought, I wonder if women on this path feel unsafe often. And it made me think, I don't know if I'm gonna walk it by myself again, especially with headphones. And I was thinking, like, that's another thing Oprah talks about in this podcast, is like women who run with headphones in. And she said it makes her so angry. And I thought, I'd never even thought about it. I love putting on my headphones and like canceling out the world and going for a walk. But then she said, when you do that, you make it so that you have like less of a peripheral, and you have way less awareness, so that if someone is gonna come up to you from behind and attack you, you don't see it coming. I never thought of it that way, and now I feel like so irresponsible for how many times I've walked with my headphones on, especially on a path by myself. I'm not talking down like a busy street, you know, like a boardwalk or the beach or whatever. I'm talking like a wooded path where I often would walk, which honestly I don't know if I'm ever going to do again by myself. I'm not saying it's unsafe. I don't know of anything that's ever happened on that path, and I've lived in this house for 11 years, but something has shifted and I just don't feel safe anymore. And the whole headphones thing, that's like one of the main reasons why I wanted to film this video. If you're someone who runs or walks and listens to music, think about it. Like, maybe only have one in, or I was looking, there's ones you can get that like go outside of your ears and they just like conduct the sound, so you can still hear everything, but you could hear like it, you know, just a thought. Or, you know, walk where it's busy, walk with somebody, like you could both say have one headphone in so you can still hear around you. I felt like it was my duty to tell you about this podcast because it literally has shifted things for me so much that I am like embarrassed that I'd never thought of it before, and I know I'm not going to be the only one. So please listen to that podcast. She talks about trusting your gut, and she talks about the headphones. To me, those were like the two things. And then the other example, we were having drinks in a restaurant in Surrey after the masterclass and playing Skip-Bo, and even though I was with my boyfriend, I got to a point where the sun set and the outside of the restaurant went from being like kids and families to like obvious drug deals, obvious pimps, like there was obvious like sex trade workers. Like it was a real shift. As soon as the sun went down, we saw them starting to come into the restaurant, we saw them starting to come into the hotel, and I was like, I'm out. Like, I don't care if I'm overreacting, I want to go back to the room. And he was like, okay, yeah, no problem, like it's time for us to go. And I really appreciated that he wasn't like, oh no, like who cares, we're fine, we're safe. Like he was like, I respect you, I respect your intuition, like let's just go back up to the room. And again, I'm sure it was fine, and I'm sure like I would definitely stay at that hotel again. I just wouldn't hang out outside at nighttime. So ever since listening to that podcast, like it's really shifted for me, and I want you to listen to your gut, and I want you to listen to your intuition. So if you're alone with a coworker and you don't feel comfortable, if you're in a doctor's office and you don't feel comfortable, like you can always request a nurse. You can always like leave the door open. You can request that you and your boss meet in like an open area. And if someone makes you feel less than or stupid or belittles you or mocks you for wanting to trust your intuition, too bad for them. Like, I'm here to support you. I will self high-five you every single time. Also, to me, that would just be another red flag. Like, if you don't want to respect me enough to trust my intuition, what's that about, right? So I'm gonna leave that here. The podcast, I will link it down below. It is the best life-saving lessons, and I really would love for you to listen to it and then share it with a colleague, your girlfriend, your sister, your mom, your daughter, your niece, whatever. Let's just like spread a little marathon or tentacle with this episode in particular. And I'll see you in the next one. It'll be much more like lighthearted, etc. But this was just really spoke to me, and I wanted to make sure that you heard it and you listened to it. So, okay, that's all. Thanks for watching. Lace up, subscribe, become a marathoner. Life's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Trust that intuition, be safe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.